The National Union of Mine Workers says Electricity Minister Kgosientsho Ramokgopa's visit to the country's power stations are long overdue. The union hopes the visits will help Ramokgopa get to the bottom of the country's persistent power cuts. However, the NUM is disagreeing with the minister's take on corruption not playing any part in the country's electricity crisis. To talk more about this, I'm joined now by Malekutu Bizzah Motubatse, the union's Highveld Regional Chairperson. And just to discuss this further, Bizzah, good afternoon. Welcome to Today on eNCA. Thank you very much for your time. I saw and heard the minister last week saying in one of the power stations, I think it was Tutuka in Mpumalanga, saying, well, nobody has presented him with anything around corruption and stuff. But in your statement, which I've read, you mention that there's an issue around corruption. It's a major issue that's happening in power stations. Tell us more about that.
Good afternoon, Braden. Look, we are saying that the reason that we are subjected to load shedding as a country is because of corrupt activities that are happening at ESCOM. One, when you look into the issue of coal cartels that are busy exchanging coals with stones and expecting that a boiler will be able to crush those stones on its own, talks to corruption. Two, the issue of maintenance in ESCOM, whereby you will have a situation whereby just an ordinary pump that costs 20,000 has been bought with 800,000. It is also corruption. Imagine if 5 power stations can need such a pump, which amounts to 20,000, which should be 100,000. But we are then going to have a situation whereby ESCOM buys those pumps with 800 multiplied by 5. You will not sustain the business. You will not sustain the power station. The third one is the issue of outages. We are saying that during outages, when contractors are conducting these outages, they bring substandard parts and they replace an original part with a part that, of course, is of substandard. That is why when a unit it is coming back from outage, it trips more than before it goes to an outage. So that on its own, it talks to nothing but corruption.
So the service providers to ESCOM are very much at the center of this corruption.
Very much so. In fact, just to be honest, the interview that was made by the former CEO, Andre Reiter, about cartels and corrupt activities in ESCOM, it is a true reflection. Unfortunately, the poor man was attacked instead of getting into the details of trying to get information. But corruption, load shedding, it is informed by corruption. Corruption in ESCOM, it is omnipresent.
Okay, now in your statement, which I've seen earlier, you are suggesting that the minister must talk to the NUM, he must engage with you to speak about corruption. Will you lay down before him the evidence that you, as the NUM, would have about this alleged corruption?
Yes, we will. Even when we met with the minister, Comrade Pravin Gordhan, we gave him information. So we'll still give this minister information as well, because our members are talking to us on a daily basis. Our members, they know people who are corrupt. They know managers in ESCOM who are corrupt. They know managers in ESCOM who have business interests. Managers who are fronting with their cousins, who are fronting with their wives, their sisters, looting ESCOM resources. So we've got names and surnames. We gave Comrade Pravin Gordhan the names and surnames of managers that we know that they are corrupt.
And nothing has happened.
Look, we cannot say nothing has happened because it is not even 2 months that we had a meeting with the Minister Gordhan. So maybe he's working on it. But what we can confirm is that we have given him names and surnames, information of saying this is where you must go and knock. And we even gave him proposals as to how we can cap corruption, in particular in the power stations, because that is where corruption is. It was a very strategic meeting that unfortunately we cannot be able to outline here on eNCA, because it might hamper or temper with investigations. But we gave him information that if you do want to train the power stations, we are telling you, you will still run these power stations for the next 50 years, because with the current posture and the current looting in ESCOM, I'm telling you, in less than 10 years, ESCOM will be done.
So have you asked for a meeting? Have you already requested a meeting with Kgosientsho Ramokgopa, the new Minister of Electricity?
No, we allowed him to settle. As the NUM, we are doing, we're counting. We are hoping that in the next 2 or 3 weeks, because you'll remember that he has just been appointed. He was all over the power station, meeting with different stakeholders. So, which were disappointed as the NUM, because we hope that will be the first stakeholder that he will meet, so that we can give him not only evidence of corruption, but also solutions of how we can be able to deal with load shedding. From where we are seated then, load shedding can be dealt with tomorrow if we've got the minister who's listening. We have got, yes, it can be done with it tomorrow if you've got a minister who's listening.
Okay, why should the NUM have been the first stakeholder for him to consult? Can you just tell us more about that?
Look, we are organizing at ESCOM. We know what is happening. We don't read about load shedding. When load shedding is happening, when the units are tripping, we are there. We know what causes the units to trip. When the units are being ran with what is called half load, we know why the units are ran with half loads. There are two things that leads to load shedding. The first one is the units that will trip, or it is the unit that are ran with half loads, merely because of boiler tube leaks and other things that might happen as and when the unit is running. So this is the information that we are having, and this is the information that we can give the minister. We have been saying that we don't read about the boiler, we don't Google the boiler on Google. No, we know the boiler, we know the turbine, we know what is it that is causing these turbines and boilers not to function properly.
Yeah, are any of your members implicated in the alleged corruption in the power stations? As you say, they are on the ground?
No, we don't want to be specific as to whether it is our members or not our members, but you can say that ESCOM employees, their hands are found in the cookie jar.
Yeah, which is tragedy. You've applauded in your statement the removal of the Tutuka Power Station General Manager. And we've had lots of stories about Tutuka, and the Minister of Electricity last week telling us on eNCA while he was speaking to my colleague Heidi Jokos that it's one of the problem child of ESCOM. There's so many challenges at Tutuka. Why are you happy that the General Manager has been removed?
The energy availability factor of Tutuka was at 27%, while that man called Solomon was the general manager there. That man failed. The power station that has an output of 600 megawatts per unit. But when he was there, that power station was running either with 1 or 2 units. And at some point, those units were at half load. So we have raised this concern as the NUM to say that you can't have such a power station not operating in a manner that it is expected. We looked in a manner that the previous power stations were running that particular power station, and they were running that particular power station above 70% of energy availability factor. But after the arrival of Solomon, that power station was not performing. So we have said that this man must be removed because he's the reason why we're subjected to stage 6 and stage 5 load shedding. Because if you've got Tutuka power station running 6 units with 600 megawatts per unit, then there is no way that you can even arrive to stage 3 or stage 4 of load shedding. So when we learned that that man has been removed, we said that this is a new beginning, and indeed we will now see load shedding being downgraded, and eventually we'll see 0% of load shedding.
So are you saying, just to clarify, because we've been wondering, I've been wondering, let me speak for myself, of what really has changed since Andre de Ruyter was removed as CEO. ESCOM currently does not have a CEO, but we've seen the downscaling of stages of load shedding, way below stage 6, including 2 days last week when, almost 2 days in full Bizzah, we had no load shedding and we're all relieved in the country. Are you saying it's because Tutuka has a new management team?
Look, it can't be Tutuka alone. There is quite an upgrade of the business units or the power stations. Not upgrade, but an improvement. I wanted to say improvement. There is an improvement from a number of power stations. But then, when we released a statement previously, we mentioned 3 power stations that, in fact, 4 power stations that are the reason why we have a load shedding. We mentioned Kusile, we mentioned Matla, we mentioned Kendall, and we mentioned Tutuka. So if you've got these 4 power stations performing in a manner that it is expected, you will maybe have your stage 1, stage 2, but these are big power stations with more than 600 megawatts per unit. So, but Tutuka, instead of mitigating load shedding, it was going or it was not giving us what it is expected. That is why you have said that the energy availability factor of Tutuka was at 27%, meaning that you've got probably 2 units that are running with what we call a half load. So we want to believe that when the new manager took over, he then improved the performance of Tutuka, and also other power stations came on board. We know that in Kendall we had 2 units that were not running. At Matla we had 1 unit, if not 2 at some point, that were not running. But it can't be that Tutuka alone can then downgrade load shedding from stage 6 to stage 1 or stage 2.
So you as the NUM, you as the NUM are pointing to corruption as one of the key causes of where we are with blackouts, but you are also saying improved management is helping to lower the stages of load shedding. Very briefly, Bizzah, are you confident this improved management of these power stations can be sustained?
Look, if you only deal with management and you leave corruption unattended, you're going to have a problem. We must deal with both.
Okay. Thank you very much. That's Malekutu Bizzah Motubatse from the National Union of Mine Workers sharing their views as the NUM, which mobilizes and organizes in Eskom. It's got many employees of Eskom are members of the NUM. Very interesting view there by the trade union. Well, we'll have to wait and see what the Minister of Electricity will say after meeting with the NUM in the near future.